From Houthi attacks in the Red Sea to Hezbollah's cross-border strikes targeting Israel. After Tel Aviv launched its attack on Gaza, several armed groups have been carrying out assaults against Israel and its allies in support of Hamas. This includes Iran-backed fighters who have targeted U.S. forces at Iraqi bases since October 7. Baghdad says these are warnings that it's time for the troops to leave. Baghdad and Washington have reportedly reached a preliminary deal for the full withdrawal of U.S.-led coalition troops from Iraq by the end of 2026. It comes after more than 6 months of talks, which were initiated by Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani. The announcement was postponed due to the spillover effects from Israel's war on Gaza. Sudani says U.S. troops have become a magnet for instability in the region. The government added that U.S. retaliatory strikes against armed groups threaten efforts to stabilize Iraq after decades of conflict. And for more on the deal between Baghdad and the U.S., joining me now from Ankara is Bilgehan Öztürk, a researcher at SETA, and from Washington, D.C., Sean Michael Cox, Senior Policy Advisor at Global Policy Group. Gentlemen, welcome to Straight Talk. It's good to have you on the program. So, Sean, this preliminary agreement between the U.S. and Iraq suggests hundreds of U.S. soldiers would be pulled out of Iraq in September 2025 and the remaining by the end of 2026. How important step is this, and were you expecting it?
Actually, I was not expecting this at all. Issues with Iraq have not been on the radar recently in Washington circles, especially given the election season that we're entering in now. And Iraq has fallen off of the news cycle in America, so it comes as probably quite a surprise to many people here. Some people might not even realize we still have soldiers in Iraq, and withdrawing them is definitely an issue that different political groups here, Republicans and Democrats alike, have raised at different occasions, but it definitely has not been high on the radar.
So, talks have been delayed several times. What was the main reason behind this, and how has Israel's war on Gaza changed the balances in the country as well as the region?
Well, I think one of the main reasons is it is not an easy decision to undertake the withdrawal of U.S. forces, which have been there for a very long time, and it has been an integral part of Iraq's security. And it's been such a long time that it is even hard to imagine Iraq and Iraq's security without the presence of U.S. forces by now. So I think that is the main reason of the postponement of those talks and the final agreement. But of course, Israel's war on Gaza has impacted many places, and Iraq has been one of those because it has also stirred an increase in the let's say exchange of fire between United States forces and Iran, let's say, led or sponsored Shia militias in Iraq. So definitely, it had an impact on the calculations and the trajectory of the talks between the two countries for the possible withdrawal.
So, Sean, what's at stake for Iran to see U.S. troops leaving the country? Was this part of Tehran's long-term goal?
Oh, this is absolutely something that Iran is looking forward to seeing. I mean, since the fall of Saddam Hussein, the U.S. invasion in 2003, the Shia faction in Iraq has come to dominate the political system there, and that naturally is governed to a certain extent by support from Iran. The popular mobilization units, there's 150,000 militia soldiers that are funded by the Iraqi government, but also receive funding, training, support, and direction from Iran. The troops, the U.S. troops that are there, have ostensibly been there to help with the Islamic State issue, which still exists even to a very small extent. But ostensibly, they're a wedge between the Iraqi government and the Iranian government, and pulling them out will leave an open field for Iran to significantly increase its influence in the domestic politics of Iraq.
So do you think this would make Baghdad more reliant on Iran?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, the Kurds in the north and the Sunni minority are already fairly weakened vis-a-vis the Shia majority, both in government and in society and business and any aspects of development. And the government has been able to use the presence of U.S. soldiers there to justify having a foreign policy that can be somewhat oriented towards Western interests, because it's also not just U.S. troops that are there. There's a coalition of other European powers that have soldiers there, and they are
Yes.
also going to be withdrawing. With all of them gone, it leaves the field open for Iran.
So what do you think, Bilgehan? Would you agree? I mean, will a power vacuum be left after the U.S. Troops withdrawal, and which actors are likely to fill that gap, let's say, except for Iran?
It is very likely that in a vacuum created by a withdrawal of the U.S. forces, Iran is standing to be the main benefit from this outcome. But it is also up to the performance of other regional actors in the region, such as Gulf countries or Turkey, to fill that vacuum. So it is still not clear whether Turkey or Gulf countries, or as a coalition among these countries, to feel whether their performance will be enough to balance Iranian influence or fill the vacuum created by the United States. But if they cannot, let's say, figure out how to fill that vacuum or balance, Iranian influence, it is very obvious that Iran will be the main benefit from this. But it is also up to the Baghdad's performance whether they can be able to, let's say, maintain their relative autonomy from Tehran or not. Because recently we have seen PM Sudani, in efforts to, let's say, more, let's say, turn Baghdad into a more autonomous, let's say, player. As much as possible, independent from Tehran, but it is still yet to be seen.
So, Sean, how concerning is this withdrawal for some U.S. policymakers and allies in the region?
Well, one of the great concerns from the U.S. perspective, such as it is that it would be a repeat of Afghanistan. That still weighs heavily on the politics here. Republicans bring it up every chance they can as a failure of the Biden administration. And by pulling troops out of Iraq when they're not prepared to handle the repercussions of that, there's fear that there will be an Afghanistan 2.0. Now, obviously, the situations are different. The Iraqi government is more stable than the pre-Taliban government in Afghanistan, but still that is a concern that's being raised. And if Iraq becomes more unstable, then it could mean that U.S. troops will have to go back yet a third time, because as most people know, the soldiers left in 2011 and they came back in 2014 with the rise of the Islamic State. If they're pulled out again and instability increases, it's in the best interest of the United States and its allies to put troops back in there again so that they can ensure that at least some of their security interests are being taken care of.
I want to continue with you because the reported deadline for the withdrawal falls after the U.S. presidential election. So let's say if Trump wins, will he follow the Biden administration's plan?
There's absolutely no way of knowing that. Former President Trump has demonstrated that he's not really beholden to the obligations of the United States have made previously. We can see that with the Iran nuclear deal. We can see that with NAFTA, with policies and agreements that we've had with China and other countries. We would expect a president would follow on the obligation in the new administration, would follow on the obligations of the previous administration, as Biden did with Trump in Afghanistan, but Trump is very unpredictable when it comes to this.
So, Bilgehan, do you see any relevance between the U.S. troops withdrawal from Iraq and Turkey's latest security and anti-terror operations with Baghdad, and how will Turkey navigate this situation?
I don't see a relevance or direct correlation between the ongoing, let's say, counterterrorism or anti-terror operations of Turkey and the decision to withdraw from Iraq, because Turkey's anti-terror operations are not new. They have been there. They have been there for some time. It has been underway. yes, there is a new momentum between Ankara and Baghdad for more cooperation for that effort. But the talks and plans to withdraw from Iraq is wholly, I think, independent of let's say Turkey's ongoing efforts and footprint in northern Iraq. It is more about U.S. strategic calculations and the relations with Baghdad and the growing concern for Iran's, let's say, aggressiveness. So it is basically about the domestic, let's say, less of domestic lack of appetite for long-term presence, and at the same time removing U.S. troops, servicemen from the harm's way.
So, Sean, some argue that the U.S.'s legal justification for being in Syria is also based on Washington's agreement with Baghdad. Is there some truth to it? And amid rising geopolitical risks and the upcoming U.S. presidential elections, could we also see the U.S. troops withdrawing from northern Syria as well?
Oh, absolutely. There are roughly 900 soldiers in northern Syria representing U.S. interests in the country, and they are directly supported by the troops in Iraq. We pull the troops out of Iraq, then the supply chain, the support that the soldiers in northern Syria have vanishes. So it'd be very difficult for them to maintain a presence there without the presence in Iraq. So it is very likely that these soldiers would leave northern Syria as well.
What kind of a legacy, Sean, is the U.S. leaving behind in Iraq since its invasion in 2003?
Well, it depends on where you sit on the political spectrum. Most people would probably say that it's a legacy of failure, not to the extent that our involvement in Afghanistan is, but we unilaterally invaded a country 21 years ago. We left the country, we came back to the country, now we're leaving the country again, and it's not a politically stable country. It's not a failed state by any means, but it has a very weak central government. It has highly factionalized groups operating within the country, and there's always the potential for some sort of cataclysmic outbreak of violence. And that's not what anyone wants to see. And so it's not much of a legacy to be proud of.
So what do you think, Bilgehan?
Well, again, it is up for discussion. But as a Turkish person and observer, of course, it is not a very positive, let's say, footprint or legacy because of the legal or ethical concerns of the invasion in the first place. Of course, it has been a, let's say, rather positive force when it comes to Turkey's rivalry with Iran in regional let's say, scale, and Iraq. It has been a balancing force. But in terms of legacy, it has been a legacy of occupation and failure of the state in the long term. And it's more affiliated with destruction and negative developments, unfortunately.
All right, gentlemen, unfortunately, we'll have to leave it here. Thank you very much for joining me on Straight Talk. And that's all for this edition of Straight Talk with me, Aisha Subarkash. If you've got any comments, please share them with us on X at Straight Talk TRT. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's all from me. Take care and goodbye.